Welcome to the Jeffers Brief, only on Contra Radio Network.
And hello again, I'm John Jeffers here on the Jeffers Brief. We are on KYAH 540 AM, the Talk Authority of Utah, and on the Contra Radio Network. Thanks for joining me. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about something a little different. Specifically, not only does Contra Radio Network deal with political questions, but we also deal with the Patriot and the prepper questions. Now, for those of you that aren't sure what a prepper is, it's just a nicer name for a survivalist. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. But, what I want to talk about is, for those of you that may be thinking about joining a prepper group, which is always a good idea in my mind, there are some people you don't want to have in your group. You don't want anything to do with them. Now, I'm sure if you've been to a couple of the meetings, there's a couple of people there you just kind of like, what is going on there? And there's something, not right about a person. And you're just kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this, But specifically, I want to talk to you about those that have narcissistic personality disorders. And they are in all segments of our society, even at your workplace, and for some of you, perhaps even in your own home. However, to be fair, all of us have some narcissistic tendencies. We just do. The reason we get to the personality disorder is when it gets really crazy. And you're probably thinking, well, gee, what is a narcissistic personality disorder? The word narcissism, it gets tossed around a lot in our selfie-obsessed, celebrity-driven culture, often to describe someone who seems excessively vain or full of themselves. But in psychological terms, narcissism doesn't mean self-love, at least not of a genuine sort. It's more accurate to say that people with narcissistic personality disorders, NPD, are in love with an idealized, grandiose image of themselves. Now, to me, that in and of itself describes Hollywood, about 99% of it. And they're in love with this inflated self-image precisely because it allows them to avoid deep feelings of insecurity. But propping up their delusions of grandeur takes a lot of work, and that's where the dysfunctional attitudes and behaviors come in. NPD involves a pattern of self-centered, arrogant thinking and behavior, a lack of empathy and consideration for other people, with an excessive need for admiration. Does that not sound like Hollywood to you? It does to me. Others often describe people with NPD as cocky, manipulative, selfish, patronizing, and demanding. Who does that sound like? Sounds like a lot of people in Hollywood. The professional pretenders. So this way of thinking and behaving surfaces in every area of the narcissist's life, from work and friendships to family and love relationships. And people with narcissistic personality disorder are extremely resistant to changing their behavior, even when it's causing them problems. You see, their tendency is to turn the blame onto others. What's more, they are extremely sensitive and react badly to even the slightest criticisms, disagreements, or perceived slights, which they view as personal attacks. For the people in the narcissist life, it's often easier just to go along to get along with their demands to avoid the coldness and the rages. That's what NPD is. Now, like I said, narcissism is in every human. It's just who we are. It's part of human nature. It's when you start taking it to the nth degree, and they're so far out of the ballpark they can't even see it. The ballpark that is. But here we go. Now let's do this. Let's make it real easy. I talked about, you know, if you go to a prepper group meeting or whatever, and you think about joining a prepper group, you have to know or figure out what to look for. And so I'm going to give you 18 ways to spot a narcissist. Now, granted, this list does not just pertain to prepper groups. It pertains to life in general. And you're going to recognize some people from where you work, maybe even your spouse, maybe even your children or some other family member. You're going to recognize some of these behaviors. And why, if you find one in charge of a prepper group or one that's in a prepper group, you might want to reconsider joining that particular prepper group. So here it is. This is the deal. This is from Amanda Chan. She wrote this when? November 2nd last year. So it's pretty up to date. So just bear with me here. Now, chances are you've encountered a narcissist. You know that friend who somehow manages to revert every topic of conversation back to himself? The colleague who's always bragging about having the latest or greatest whatever? The family member who thinks she is hotter, smarter, and just generally better than you at everything? You know what I'm talking about. Now, interacting with a narcissist can be draining, and that's why it's important to be able to identify them. Now, especially for those of you singles out there who have a date with one. But sometimes the signs of narcissism are a little more nuanced. They're not always as obvious as mere depictions would have you believe. And yes, it's possible to have some traits of narcissism without having full-blown clinically diagnosed NPD, which is when narcissism starts to have a serious negative impact on everyday life and relationships. Now, people are on a continuum. There's a range of narcissism. That's from W. Keith Campbell. He's a narcissism researcher and co-author of the book, The Narcissism Epidemic, Living in the Age of Entitlement. Most people are sort of in the middle, though some are more extreme than others. And like I said, I told you that, it's true. It's the human thing. So when you think about people who you come in contact every day, whether it be a friend, romantic partner, colleague, or whatever, do any of the following seem to ring a bell? If so, you may be dealing with a narcissist. This is important. First is they're likable, at least at first glance. Because, narcissists tend to be great at first impressions, coming across as very charismatic and personable, which is why they can perform quite well in job interviews. Often the image you see of someone who is narcissistic at the beginning could be very positive, but over a longer term, it turns out to be more negative, Campbell said. So that's where the surprise comes in. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the person I just hired. Now look at what I'm dealing with. Number 2, not all narcissists are loud and proud. In fact, some are quiet and shy. While the loud and braggy types are the ones people usually picture when thinking about narcissists, they can actually be quite reserved. Zlayton Krizan is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at Iowa State University. He explains that there's actually 2 kinds of expressions of narcissism: grandiose, which is where the bragging and showing off is exhibited, and shy, where a person may not be as forthright or be out there with a bullhorn, but is sitting in the corner, fantasizing about when their day will come and resenting others. Now, for me, I hear that and I'm thinking, well, this could very well be how we start getting workplace shootings, where we have critical incidents at the workplace or at schools. That's not to say that narcissists are always either grandiose or shy. In most people, there's elements of both shy narcissism and grandiose narcissism. We like to put people in a box, Krizan said. But when you look at how these personality traits present themselves, you see separation only at extreme levels. Number 3, they can often be found in leadership roles. Not that that makes them good leaders, notes researcher Gene Twenge, co-author of The Narcissism Epidemic with Campbell. But narcissists often find themselves in leadership positions because people who are narcissistic want to be leaders. They don't necessarily make better leaders, but they want to do it, so they're more likely to end up in those positions. You know who I'm talking about, guys. Number 4, they always manage to make the conversation about themselves. You could start talking to a person about how you have cancer, and pretty soon you're talking about their new car. Number 5, they're also guilty of name dropping. It's all in the name of self-promotion and making themselves seem better, which includes the tactic of name dropping. Not every story, this is number 6, not every story narcissists tell is one of victory, but even in the stories of tragedy and failure, there's an air of entitlement and victimization. Now, narcissists will often tell stories about themselves, sometimes repeating the same story over and over again. And many times the story will be about an instance of personal heroism or an exploit. But even when a story is of something negative that happened, it'll never, ever be the narcissist's fault. There's more emotional victimization, Krizan explained. There's still an air of self-reference about not being understood or people not recognizing your value. It's about me and how I'm great, but others aren't realizing it. Number 7, they like nice things. Well, we all like nice things. Now, we're not saying that all shopaholics or materialistic people are narcissists, or that all narcissists are also shopaholics. But one of the hallmark traits of narcissism is the desire to display high status, and this is often done with material items, Twenge says. One place to differentiate it is sometimes a shopaholic will tell you what a good deal she got on something, and the narcissist is more likely to emphasize how prestigious or status-oriented the thing is. The really prototypical example, they drove up in a Ferrari, but they won't tell you what a good deal they got on it. Appearance is everything to them. That's number 8. Narcissists are not necessarily more attractive than other people, but they do take care of their appearance, place an importance on looking physically attractive, Twenge said. Not everyone who makes a point of to take care of their appearance is a narcissist, but well-applied nails, hair, and so on would be an indicator. Number 9, they have lots of friends on social media and not a single bad picture. Now, people who are narcissists use it to maintain status. And so what they do is they tend to have more attractive photos and more self-promoting broader networks. More, quote-unquote friends on Facebook. Number 10, they are strongly averse to criticism. While no one can honestly say they like receiving criticism, people with narcissism are hypersensitive to it, Krizan says. Number 11, excuses are a narcissist's best friend. Now, narcissists tend to externalize blame, pinning the blame on everyone but themselves. They're good at making excuses and not taking credit for the mistakes they make. Number 12, they leave a trail of wreckage behind them. Does this person have a history of bad relationships or work experiences? Consider that a red flag. With narcissist CEOs, for instance, you'll see that they've gone into companies, kind of wrecked them, then moved on to something else, Campbell explained. In relationships, they may have infidelity, which destroys that relationship, and then they'll move on to another one. And in that vein, they are more likely to cheat. That's because a narcissist won't put the feelings of the partner above his or her own. There is always the undeniable self-esteem boost that comes when you find out another person, even if that person is not your partner, is attracted to you. Together, these two elements help to explain why infidelity may be more common among narcissists. Number 14, everything is personal. Particularly in the quieter narcissists. There may not be signs of overt self-reference and promotion, but there's defensiveness and reactive anger if they are not recognized or if they can't get their way. If you do something to the narcissist that he doesn't like, it means you're against him and you don't understand him. Number 15. A narcissistic person probably has no idea he or she is a narcissist. Now, narcissism in itself is sort of a double whammy. Not just because you have disturbances or believe you're special in some way more than others, but because those things in themselves will prevent you from seeing what you have these problems. So, in the more shy narcissist who may also experience symptoms of depression or anxiety, these other things may spur them to get professional help. But the grandiose people, because they feel superior and because they may even have initial success, they're very unlikely to seek treatment. It would only be after they develop so many problems where they ask themselves, I feel so great. I know I'm awesome. But why did everybody leave me? There you go. Number 16. You find yourself resorting to flattery just to maintain the peace with a narcissist. While the best way to deal with a narcissist is just to cut the cord and run, there are certain circumstances where you have no choice but to deal. Now, Twinge says, maybe the narcissist is a family member or maybe it's your boss. In these cases, flattery is the best way to avoid the conflict. Number 17. Narcissists are not low in self-esteem. A common belief is that people who are high in narcissism are secretly low in self-esteem, but that just isn't true. As far as narcissists in a typical population are concerned, they have a very high self-esteem and don't have a deep-seated insecurity as far as we can tell, Twinge said. Indeed. Campbell adds that narcissists seem to be confident through and through. Number 18. Men are more likely to be narcissists than women. And the level of narcissism is higher today among today's millennials than previous generations at similar ages. As far as whether some professions or cultures have more narcissists than others, more research needs to be done to determine that. So those are the 18 ways. What we got here? Okay. Now there's a couple of things we need to know the difference here. Let's talk about the 6 common traits of narcissists and gaslighters. Because now you need to understand how narcissists and gaslighters emotionally manipulate and exploit their victims. This is important. Who was this? This is Preston Nee. He wrote this in Psychology Today. I found it. I think it's pretty good. And I want you to understand the difference between the two, because they're not the same. Now, psychologist Stephen Johnson writes that a narcissist is someone who has buried his true self-expression in response to early injuries and replaced it with a highly developed compensatory false self. This alternate persona often comes across as grandiose, as above others, self-absorbed, highly conceited. Gaslighting is a form of persistent manipulation and brainwashing that causes the victim to doubt her or himself and to ultimately lose one's own sense of perception, identity, and self-worth. A gaslighter's statements and accusations are often based on deliberate falsehoods and calculated marginalization. The term gaslighting is derived from the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband tries to convince his wife that she's insane by causing her to question herself and her reality. Now, multiple studies have been done and writings have been done on the impact of narcissism and gaslighting on relationships. Now, while each of these often destructive pathologies is unique, there are certain behavioral overlaps. Now, following the 6 common traits from a reference from the book How to Successfully Handle Narcissists and How to Successfully Handle Gaslighters and Stop Psychological Bullying. So now you know the difference. Not all narcissists and gaslighters possess every characteristic that's going to be identified. However, chronic narcissists and gaslighters are likely to exhibit at least several of the following on a regular basis. Now, you guys need to understand this, especially in the world of prepping. And we're moving to that. We're going to move to that specific topic but I want to give you some groundwork, a basis, a firm grasp of what we're talking about. So number one, frequent lies and exaggerations. Both narcissists and gaslighters are prone to frequent lies and exaggerations about themselves and others, and have the tendency of lifting themselves up by putting others down. Now, while narcissists often strive to make themselves seem superior and special by showing off, bragging, taking undeserved credit, and other forms of self-aggrandizement, gaslighters tend to concentrate on making you feel inferior through false accusations, constant criticism, and psychological intimidation. Both narcissists and gaslighters can be adept at distortion of facts, deliberate falsehoods, character assassinations, and negative coercions. One key difference is that while the narcissist lies and exaggerates to boost their fragile self-worth, the gaslighter does so to augment their domination and control. Number two, rarely admit flaws and are highly aggressive when criticized. Now, many narcissists and gaslighters have thin skin, and they can react poorly when called to account for their negative behavior. Now, when challenged, the narcissist is likely to either fight, for example, temper tantrum, excuse making, denial, blame, hypersensitivity, etc., or take flight, bolt out the door, avoidance, silent treatment, sulking, resentment, or other forms of passive aggression. The gaslighter nearly always resorts to escalation by doubling or tripling down on their false accusations or coercions to intimidate or oppress their opponent. Many gaslighters view relationships as inherently competitive rather than collaborative. It's a zero-sum game when one is either a winner or a loser, on top or at the bottom. Offense is the best defense is a mantra for many gaslighters, which also represents their aggressive method of relating to people. Starting to get the ideas? You've seen these people. You've dealt with these people. You may know people. Number three, false image projection. Now, according to the anonymous partner of a narcissist, she says, "My husband always wants people to see him as successful, powerful, and envy-worthy, no matter how shaky his real life actually is." You see, both narcissists and gaslighters tend to project false, idealized images of themselves to the world in order to hide their inner insecurities. Many narcissists like to impress others by making themselves look good externally. You know what I'm saying? Follow me? Yeah? This trophy complex can exhibit itself physically, romantically, sexually, socially, religiously, financially, materially, professionally, academically, or culturally. The underlying message of this display is, "I'm better than you," or "Look at how special I am. I'm worthy of everyone's love, admiration, and acceptance." Gaslighters, on the other hand, often create an idealized self-image of being the dominant, suppressive alpha male or female in personal relationships, at the workplace, or in high-profile positions of society, such as politics and media. Many gaslighters like to view themselves falsely as all-powerful and strong, capable of dishing out judgments and penalties at will. Pathological gaslighters often take pride and boost themselves up by marginalizing those whom they perceive as weaker, believing that the meek deserve their downtrodden fate. They attack their victims with direct or subtle cruelty and contempt, gaining sadistic pleasure from these offenses and betraying a lack of empathy and humanity. In essence, narcissists want others to worship them, while gaslighters want others to submit to them. In a big way, these external facades become pivotal parts of their false identities, replacing the real and insecure self. Number four, rule breaking and boundary violation. Many narcissists and gaslighters enjoy getting away with violating rules and social norms. For examples of narcissistic trespass include cutting in line, chronic undertipping, personal space intrusion, borrowing items without returning, using others' properties without asking, disobeying traffic laws, breaking appointments, negating promises. The examples of gaslighting trespass include direct or subtle marginalizing remarks, public or private shaming and humiliation, sardonic humor and sarcastic comments, internet trolling, angry and hateful speech, and virulent attacks on undesirable individuals and groups. Both narcissist and gaslighter boundary violations presume entitlement, with a narrow, egocentric orientation that opposes and dehumanizes their victims. In severe cases, this boundary violation pathology may result in illicit and underhanded dealings, financial abuse, sexual harassment, date rape, domestic abuse, hate crimes, human rights violations, and other forms of criminality. Many narcissists and gaslighters take pride in their destructive behaviors, as their machinations provide them with a hollow and desperate sense of superiority and privilege. Number 5. Emotional invalidation and coercion. Although narcissists and gaslighters can be, but not always, physically abusive, for the majority of their victims, emotional suffering is where the damage is most painfully felt. Both narcissists and gaslighters enjoy spreading and arousing negative emotions in order to feel powerful and keep you insecure and off balance. They habitually invalidate others' thoughts, feelings, and priorities, showing little remorse for causing people in their lives pain. They often blame their victims for having caused their own victimization. You wouldn't get yelled at if you weren't so stupid. Have you heard those before? I have. Now, in addition, many narcissists and gaslighters have unpredictable mood swings and are prone to emotional drama. You never know what might displease them and set them off. They become upset at any signs of independence and self-affirmation. For example, who do you think you are? They turn agitated if you disagree with their views or fail to meet their expectations. As mentioned earlier, they are sensitive to criticism, but quick to judge others. By keeping you down and making you feel inferior, they boost their fragile ego and feel more reassured about themselves. Number 6, manipulation, the use or control of others as an extension of oneself. Both narcissists and gaslighters have a tendency to make decisions for others to suit their own agenda. Narcissists may use their romantic partner, child, family, friend, or colleague to meet unreasonable self-serving needs, fulfill unrealized dreams, or cover up weaknesses and shortcomings. Narcissists are also fond of using guilt, blame, and victimhood as manipulative devices. Gaslighters conduct psychological manipulation toward individuals and groups through persistent distortion of the truth. I'm going to read that again. I want you to understand this. Gaslighters conduct psychological manipulation toward individuals and groups through persistent distortion of the truth, with the intention of causing their victims to question themselves and feel less confident. In personal and or professional environments, they manipulate by micromanaging, controlling relationships, including telling others how they should think, feel, and behave under the gaslighter's unreasonable restrictions and scrutiny. They often become critical, angry, intimidating, and or hostile toward those who fail to bow down to their directives. Gaslighter manipulation is often highly aggressive with punitive measures, tangible or psychological, executed toward those who fail to recognize and obey their self-perceived authority. Perhaps the biggest distinction between narcissists and gaslighters is that narcissists use and exploit, and gaslighters dominate and control. While the narcissist does so to compensate for a desperate sense of deficiency, of being unloved as the real self, the gaslighter does so to hide their ever-present insecurity of being powerless and losing control. Both of these psychological types betray an inability and or unwillingness to relate to people genuinely and equitably as human beings. They become special and superior by being less human and by dehumanizing others. In the worst case scenarios, some individuals possess traits of both narcissism and gaslighting. This is a highly toxic and destructive combination of vanity, manipulation, bullying, and abuse, all unleashed in order to compensate for the perpetrator's deep-seated sense of inadequacy and fear. Now I'm telling you, this was by Preston Nee. He's the author of How to Successfully Handle Narcissists and How to Successfully Handle Gaslighters and Stop Psychological Bullying. Look up the books. You can order it from him. I would suggest getting a copy for yourself just to keep in your library. That's what I think. So, anyways, we got an idea. By the way, if somebody does this, just remember they might be these types of narcissists and gaslighters. I mean, who knows? Look, I'm not a doctor. I'm telling you what I'm reading here. I want to get this out to you. Now comes, what have we? Oh, I got plenty of time. Now comes this. I told you. Well, let me see here. I want to make sure we have time on this. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking to myself, how do we deal with it? No, we're not doing that one. What is that? Get out of here. All right. Now from Business Think, from the UNSW Business School in Australia. They wrote this article, and I love it. I'm glad I found it. This is where it comes for you preppers out there. And to a certain extent, you Patriot groups out there too. I mean, this just isn't for preppers, but it's for Patriots or, any other group if you think about it. But specifically, how survivalist leaders present a toxic danger. This was written in 20 June 2018. And this is important to know. All right? A capacity for self-preservation is a threat to everyone else. Survivors are one thing. Heroes of actual events or circumstances that would have tested the mettle of most human beings, but survivalists, also known as preppers, are something quite different. They are regular people with jobs and homes who are fearful about the future and are constantly preparing for some cataclysmic event that hasn't happened and hasn't tested them. Survivalists invest in building underground bunkers, hoarding food, clothes, communication devices, and weapons that will all offer them peace of mind. Chris Jackson, a professor. I'm not doing that. Get out of there. I hate that. Anyways, Chris Jackson, a professor in the School of Management of the UNSW Business School, has been studying this personality type, and while confirming that in a disaster situation, their capacity for self-preservation is certainly high, he has also revealed the threat they pose more widely to the general population in day-to-day situations. Now look, this is going to be critical of you, but that's okay. That's okay. I can handle criticism. So can you. But if you're going to try to deal with something of this nature, you need to know what the other side thinks about you. You follow what I'm saying? For example, it's not unusual for the United States intelligence agencies to listen or to watch listen in on particular radio shows or television broadcasts of our perceived enemies around the world. That's how you figure out, what they're thinking of you, how they see you, that kind of thing. This is important. But it's criticism, so what? Survivalists are growing in number. Fueled by the availability of 24-hour online news, more and more people are agitated about something and appear to be getting ready for Armageddon. Now, Philip Lamy, a professor of sociology and anthropology at the U.S. University Castleton, traces the origins of survivalism back to the advent of the nuclear age, the Cold War, and military conflicts in Vietnam and Korea. Back then, interest in disaster preparedness gave rise to niche groups often living off the grid, but it has now become mainstream in the United States and has spread to the United Kingdom and other European countries during the past few years. Today, 3.7 million Americans classify themselves as survivalists. The National Preppers and Survivalist Expo in the U.S. regularly draws thousands of delegates to hear speakers on topics such as how to survive the die-off or how to administer emergency medication. Alongside is an expansive business industry catering to the mass paranoia. The freeze-dried survival food industry alone is estimated to be worth $400 million annually and is sold in Walmart and on the ever popular home shopping network. There is a continual tension between survival for the group and natural selection that only benefits individuals. So let's look at the collective anxiety. In his book, Emergency, This Book Will Save Your Life, former New York Times journalist Neil Strauss says, I think what we're experiencing is a kind of generational panic attack. We were born in a good time. We experienced booming technology and rising stock prices. And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened. Katrina happened. The economy plunged. It's like the rug being pulled out from under our feet. That was written almost 10 years ago. Given the present state of the world, the threats, whether from natural disasters, random terror attacks, or nerve agent poison released in the middle of a sedate British high street, even an optimist would concede that life has become more alarming since then. Would you agree with that? And the more our faith in the institutions set up to serve and protect us diminishes, the more the collective anxiety rises, and the more likely it is that some of us will take matters into our own hands. The problem, says Jackson, is that survivalists tend to be quite malevolent. They are more likely to be narcissists, disagreeable, and manipulative, low in rationality, and high in psychopathy. And in the U.S., they are also more likely to be armed. Well, duh. Unlike your wuss country, we have the Second Amendment that allows us to buy our firearms. We don't need the Queen's permission. In his paper, Are Survivalists Malevolent?, Jackson developed a survivalist behavior questionnaire to isolate the personality characteristics that may provide important information about people who present a danger to society. Survival is best achieved when everyone works together as a team with a leader who is also a team player, Jackson says. However, that's not the way humanity is built. From a Darwinistic perspective, an even better way for an individual to survive is to take from the group and not give to the group. There is a continual tension between survival for the group and natural selection that only benefits individuals, says Jackson. Now we get to our favorite, narcissist heroes. In recent years, that bold, take-the-initiative characteristic has become elevated in the public consciousness. In fact, it may be said that survivalism has had a bit of a makeover with a glut of reality TV shows suggesting it's all just a bit of fun and there's a narcissistic hero for us to elect and crown at the end of it. While seeing who can last the longest in the jungle on a diet of beetles may be entertaining, the kind of people who display these gung-ho qualities are also often found in positions of power. He says, think Donald Trump, think Kim Jong-un, think Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte, think the list goes on. Interesting. He doesn't put one socialist on there. Oh, Mr. Jackson, I think you've been called out, my friend. In a paper published in the American Psychological Association's Journal of Experimental Psychology, General Associate Professor Nicole Mead from the University of Melbourne found that narcissists, such as those mentioned above, tend to rise to and then abuse positions of power. Narcissists can feel a sense of entitlement. They expect and demand respect from others as well as special privileges, says Mead. Once they have power, they can turn into oppressors and bullies and are willing to exploit others to get what they want, she adds. Survivalists can be feted as hugely creative and entrepreneurial, particularly during times of disruptive innovation such as we are now experiencing, said Jackson. He has that Elon Musk is perhaps the poster boy for the risk-taking business leader of the modern era, but that success at all costs survivalism could also be seen as a product of the more they have, the more they have to lose, and the more protective they become of their position. Look, we all need an element of narcissism. Without it, there would be no self-esteem, no creativity, no leadership. It's like a hall of mirrors. So why do some organizations tolerate dysfunctional business leaders? Manfred Ketz de Vries, a Dutch-born psychologist and professor at INSEAD, sheds light on what he calls the darker side of leadership. In an interview with the Irish Times, he describes how many organizations have this gulag or yes culture, often driven by a narcissist chief executive weighed down by the weight of his or her own hubris. We all need an element of narcissism. Without it, there would be no self-esteem, no creativity, no leadership. But very quickly, this can turn into a personality disorder, and you end up with malignant narcissists that frequently destroy organizations and then move on. They live in a hall of mirrors, surrounded by yes-sayers, and only hear what they want to hear. There is no reality check. He has advice for business leaders who may have enough self-awareness to recognize the negative side of their survivalist personality traits. Encourage a culture in which employees have a healthy disrespect for the boss. They should also work on developing their emotional intelligence to pick up on subtle information and undercurrents. Get in touch with their strengths and weaknesses. Start listening to people and think about what effect their behavior has on others. If senior managers don't have their own house in order, they stand little chance of getting the best out of their people and may end up creating a toxic organizational culture that ultimately costs the business or group a lot of money, time, effort, and people. Think about it. Just something I wanted to bring up. Do you know somebody like this? Do you know a leader like this? Had you been to one of these group meetings, prepper meetings, Patriot group meetings? Have you run across people who act like this? These are the people you don't want in your group. They will destroy it. They will tear it down. And granted, at first they sound like they're the best leader ever. That's because they're narcissists. They know how to come around. They know how to talk. They know what buttons to push, what words to say. And before you know it, you're eating out of their hand, begging them to take over a leadership position. You're the best we've ever had. And then, that's a couple months later, you say, you know what, I don't agree with you on this one. I don't think we should invest in that. I think we should get more radios, more communications. Now, you've become the enemy. Just things to think about. That's all. That's all I'm putting out there. And this, again, this is true for not just prepper groups, but for the Patriot groups as well. You know these people. I've seen them online. I won't have anything to do with them. I won't. Okay, we've talked about what we don't want as a leader. Let's talk about the traits for people that we do want to be successful leaders, successful preppers. Now, get this. Backdoor Survivalist has come up a list with 10 personality traits of the people we needed. You know, and Gay Levy's right. Have you ever noticed that most preppers have a lot in common? There are certainly personality traits that seem to be present in nearly every single prepper and survivalist I've met. And the more prevalent these traits, the more successful they are at prepping and survival. We do a lot of talking about what preppers do wrong and about those mistakes and oversights that can get you killed. But today, let's focus on the positive, those core traits that will see you through the ups and downs of life, whether it's in the midst of a major disaster or just a daily inconvenience, which is more likely anyways. So, Gay Levy This is this person's take on the 10 things that preppers get right. And they're listed in no particular order, but you might tend to think of the first and last one might be the most important, which it is, there's just no in particular order for it. So, number one, the will to live. Preppers approach long-term survival with gusto. As busy as they might be with job and family obligations, they are laser focused on ensuring that they will be safe for the long term. They want to live and want to enjoy the bounty of life itself. To that end, they are prepared to endure hardships and are prepared to defend what is theirs. They want to live no matter what and want to be productive members of society. I think that's a little line in there is right. They want to live no matter what. I get that. But no matter what, does that mean that they want to live even if it means sacrificing the group? Just a question. I don't know. 2, thirst for knowledge. There is always something new to learn and keep the prepper's brain engaged. There is never a time when they say enough. As difficult as it may be at times to deal with the reality of our world, preppers seek knowledge and truth. They relentlessly pursue just one more skill and one more fact that will help them prevail if their world goes to hell. Number 3, belief in family values. Now, the family as a social unit is important, whether it's a family of 2 or a family of 20. Preppers know that and embrace and protect the family unit because it provides a sense of belonging as well as an environment for honesty and respect. However, the family unit is defined, and each of us may define family in different terms. The core ideals remain the same: responsibility, accountability, and love. Number 4, the MacGyver instinct. Every prepper is a handyman. Well, that's not true. I can do some stuff, but I'm not the MacGyver. We fix stuff. We make things work by cobbling together odd bits and pieces into something newly purposed. We throw away nothing lest it has some useful purpose down the road. That's also known as hoarder's heaven. We strive to jerry-rig our way out of just about anything, sometimes with only some paracord and duct tape. The words, "I can't make it work," do not exist in the prepper's vocabulary. Number 5, compassion for others. Now this is important. Remember, we talked about the narcissist who has no compassion and no empathy for others. This is the opposite. At least we hope it is. As the emotion that we feel in response to the suffering of others that motivates a desire to help, the so-called survivalists of all stereotyped as loners. Remember that? I do. These days, most preppers understand the value of being around others and feel a strong emotional connection to helping those that are unable to help themselves. This is not to say that we as a group are a bunch of bleeding hearts that will give away our hard-earned preps to anyone who comes asking. Quite the contrary. What it does mean is that we show compassion for those that are disabled, elderly, ill, or simply lack the financial means to do more than a modicum of preparations. And from these individuals, we will seek knowledge and skills rather than physical possessions. For example, if you're in a group and you're in survival mode, man with a family and about 4 kids comes walking up to the front gate, and he says, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm a doctor." "Really? What kind of a doctor are you?" "Oh, you're a general practitioner, medical doctor? Really?" And he says, "I don't have anything. What I have is my wife and 4 kids and the clothes on our back." Do you take that person in? Because not that he had lack of financial means, he just didn't know what to do. So, in my book, I say yes. What if it's just an EMT with his wife and 4 kids? "Oh, an EMT, certified EMT, really?" "Yeah, I'll take you in. We'll make do." All right, that's what I'm talking about. What about if it's a plumber? You know what they know? They know about water. They know how to make stuff work water-wise. You follow me? See what I'm getting at? So we will seek knowledge and skills rather than physical possessions. Of course, your compassion must be tempered with common sense, and in all disaster, And hell, sometimes if it doesn't take a major disaster or a major event, some people will try to take advantage. That is true. It's a brutal advantage. We saw that during Katrina. We saw it. Of your willingness to help. Use extreme caution when assisting others. Even people you feel you can turn, even people you know that you think you know, that can turn ugly in desperate circumstances. Number 6, physical and mental fitness. To stay on top of the game, we must move around more freely. We have to. In an unencumbered manner. This means you must get regular exercise. Now, this would be physically fit if you ever have to face an evacuation or bug out situation. When performed on a regular basis, functional fitness activities can help you survive when disaster strikes. Number 7, critical thinking is the ability to think clearly and rationally. For some of this comes naturally, but for most is an acquired skill that is honed by thoughtful examination of risk and rewards before coming to a logical and decisive solution to a problem. By considering various catastrophic scenarios in advance, preppers make plans for dealing with the risk most inherent to their geographical location and personal circumstances. The ability to drive a hard bargain. They practice the skill of bartering services for goods and goods for services. By doing so, they are able to acquire what they need not only for now, but for long-term survival. For example, I will give you 10 ears of corn for a chair. Figure that one out. Understanding the value of networking. Regardless of where they are located, the vast majority of preppers seek others in a respectful and open-minded manner. They know that when the going gets tough, they'll have someone to share with, and together they'll watch each other's backs, also called a mutual aid group, a MAG. 10. Faith and optimism go hand in hand. Faith is important. Without it, you may falter. Some will pray while others will reflect in their own time, but they keep moving forward, and they'll reflect quietly in their own manner. The final word is really this, really. Chances are you possess a majority of these traits of successful survivalist and prepper types. In fact, you may have these traits and until now do not even know it. Think about it. Just something to think about and wonder. That's all. That's all I'm talking about here. All right, I'm going to change gears here. I'm probably going to lose some listeners over this, but I feel the need to talk about this. Here in Illinois, they passed a bill that's even more extreme than the New York's Reproductive Health Care Act. What it does here in the tyranny state of Illinois, it repeals the state's ban on partial birth abortion. If you have kids in the car, tell them to do something else. Don't listen to this. Put me on hold when you're by yourself. If you don't know what partial birth abortion is, this is from the 1990s. One nurse, at her description after witnessing a DNX partial birth abortion in the 1990s, said this: he went in with the forceps and grabbed the baby's legs and brought them into the birth canal. Then he delivered the body and arms all the way up to the neck. At this point, only the baby's head was still inside. The baby's body was moving. His little fingers were clasping together. He was kicking his feet. All the while, his little head was still stuck inside. Then Dr. Haskell took a pair of scissors and inserted them into the back of the baby's head. Then he stuck a high-powered suction tube into the hole and sucked the baby's brains out. I almost threw up as I watched him do these things. Now here in Illinois, this horrifying procedure will be legal and available if the bill passes. It's Senate Bill 25, and it's heading to that fat bastard's desk, Governor J.B. Pritzker, for his signature. I've already signed and sent a message to Pritzker, the fat bastard, telling him to veto Senate Bill 25. You know, I want you to understand something here. This is, and I just thought of it today, and I wanted to share it with you because maybe I'm wrong. But what I'm thinking of is this. You know, you listen to the pro-abortion arguments, and they say, well, we don't want anybody to tell me what I can do with my body. It's my body. It's my body. Really? Well, the government already tells us what we can and cannot do with our bodies. For example, we cannot ingest or use cocaine or crystal meth or any barbiturate. We can only use painkillers if a doctor, a physician, says it's okay for us to have a certain amount of those pills to kill the pain of whatever it may be. You cannot, as a male or female, sell your body for the sexual pleasure of another individual. Can't do it. So it's already there. The government is already telling you what you can and cannot do with your body. So to me, that just rings false. And the idea that, yes, it is your body, you can do what you want with it. But that right ends when another individual who had no choice in the matter is involved in it. Now, I've heard people say, well, if we don't have abortions, then we're just going to have more orphanages. Well, maybe. Here's an idea. Don't engage in behavior that could promote pregnancy without using proper birth control. Abortion is not birth control, nor should it ever be considered such. However, in the case of rape and incest, I believe abortion should be allowed. But it's got to be in the first trimester. It's got to be. I would say as soon as a woman is raped or is found to have been involved in incest, perhaps you could give them the abortion pill. Just me thinking out loud here. The idea of partial birth abortion is so abhorrent to me, I can't even stand it. And if that description doesn't make your stomach churn, then you're part of the problem. You are part of the slaughter of the innocent. And if we have to build more orphanages, so be it. So be it. You know, I'd rather be called a hypocrite, a bigot, a racist, whatever, for saying what I'm saying. I don't care about your right, your body. Let me tell you something. You had the right to use your body. You did. Unfortunately, because you used it in a improper way or proper way, depending on what the situation is, you've just managed to get you're pregnant with another human being. What right do you have to tell that innocent life, sorry, I determine what's best for me? You weren't doing that when you got pregnant. Now, not to say mistakes don't happen. If you do, that's fine. There are stuff you can do for that. For example, you can take the Plan B pill. Works fine. But that's me. All right, look, I only got a very short time here. A little less, about a minute and a half. I want to say thank you for listening here. The Contra Radio Network here on the I am John Jeffers. I am on the Jeffers Brief. This is the show you're listening to. And you're also listening to me on KYAH 540 AM, Utah's Talk Authority. If you like what you hear, please give them a call. Tell them that you like the show. If you don't, get a hold of me, ContraRadio@live.com. ContraRadio@live.com, and tell me how much you hate it. I can handle it. I'm okay with it. I'm a big boy. I got my big boy pants on, and I can deal with it. If you don't like the way I do the show, that's okay too. You don't have to like it. Do this instead. Get your own show. You can run it the way you want to. You don't need. All right. In the meantime, if you want to hear this to my show and other shows on the Contra Radio Network, please go to contraradionetwork.podbean.com. You'll see a whole list of shows there. Very interesting. I think you'll like them all. And for those of you, I know who you are. I'm asking for $2 a month. $2 a month. Go to the podbean.com. And if you would, donate $2 a month. A month. A month. That's what I'm asking. A month. So, all right. As we near the end of it, I want to say thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks again for listening. I'm John Jeffers at the Jeffers Brief. Have a good week.